Order, please. This is the January 19th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. McKenna, if you would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Sissel. Commissioner Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Present.
Commissioner Drain. Commissioner Graham.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioners, you have the minutes from December the 15th in your packets. Is there any questions? Hearing none, would call for a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Volkert.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Sissel. Commissioner Brown.
Abstain.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Abstain.
Commissioner Drain. Commissioner Graham.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Commissioners, you have the subdivision and site development plans in your packets that were mailed to you. Are there any questions regarding those subdivision approvals or development plans? They will stand as mailed. Hamp, let's get you first, and then we'll get into everything else.
Warren, I request that you order that the record tonight include all statutory and regulatory provisions, the Commission's entire file for each application, and the qualifications of the staff witnesses. And I'd finally request that you administer the oath to each of those witnesses.
Or tell the truth? Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, our first item tonight under new business would be Mr. Peterson and a recommendation.
Thank you. We have before you tonight a request to hire a plans reviewer 1. We advertised that position and had 21 applicants apply. And we interviewed 9 people the first round and 3 the second round. We were happy to make the recommendation to hire Natasha Smith as our plans reviewer 1, and with a hopeful start date of Monday, January 23rd. Be happy to answer any questions about the applicant or the hiring process, but if there aren't any questions, just need a motion to approve the hiring.
Any questions, Commissioners, from Mr. Peterson? Thank you, Ben. We'll call for a motion, please.
So moved.
Commissioner Volkert.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Sissel. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Drain. Commissioner Graham.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale. And Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. The motion is approved. Megan?
All right, I just have a quick budget update for you guys, just to let you know where we stand so far this year. So the budget update is through the end of our second quarter, so we're halfway through. The easiest way to tell is just to go through the percentage of budget column that you guys have, and I think that I highlighted in yellow a couple of the key indicators for you guys. But if we look at on the first page, for total income, we're at 49.2% of what our projected budget for this year is, so pretty close. Where we lag behind a little bit in income is going to be our MPO and transit funds. As you guys know, those are heavy towards in the third and the fourth quarter, so we will catch up with that. If we scroll down a little bit, we'll get into expenses. Total personnel, we're at 47.7% of this year's budget. And if we flip over to the second page, just going through our total office, 52.6. We're a little bit heavy in recording fees right now, but that just means that we're busy. We've had a lot of plats and a lot of recording. Let's see, going through MPO expenses, we're low there as well, but again, third and fourth quarter, we will catch up with that. Contractual services, 46.4%. Travel, 40%, commission expenses, 39%, and our overall total expenditures were at 44.8%, which is good. We're a little bit under budget for expenses so far. Capital expenses so far for this year, we haven't had any. And then if we flip over to the third page, you can see our balance in our checking account for this year, and then our surety account. And actually, so far for January, we're actually a little over 3 million in our subdivision cash accounts. That pretty much has the second quarter update for you guys. Any questions that I can answer for anyone? Okay. Just next on the radar is going to be our financial, or our fiscal year '24 budget. I've started preparing that, but waiting for the Department of Local Governments to release the COLA amounts. Sometime in March, we're going to have a budget committee meeting, and those of you that are on that, we will meet and review the budget in detail at that point. And then at our next full board meeting that we have, we will vote on our 24 budget. So that's all I have for everyone.
Commissioners, any questions for Megan? Would call for a motion, please, to approve the financials as presented.
Motion to approve as submitted.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert, Commissioner Sissel, Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Ritchie, Commissioner Drain, Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for all you do. Keep us in the green. All right. Our next item is letters of credit and performance bonds. They were mailed out to you. Are there any questions regarding these 7 items? Hearing none, would call for a motion, please.
Second.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Sissel, Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Yes.
Commissioner Drain, Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We have no old business tonight. We now enter into our public hearings. Our first item tonight is 2023-01 Z County. Roger Matthew Choate II and Tayler Choate have filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 3.97 acres located at 8125 Richardsville Road from Ag to RE residential state with a general development plan.
It'd be a good idea to advise the public which cases have been withdrawn, so anybody who's here can.
Thank you, Ham. If anyone is here for the case of Julia Melton and Glenda F. Rigsby, that case has been withdrawn. And then the case of Clint Wiles and Evan Knoll and NC Brands LLC and Clint and Brenda Wiles, that case has been withdrawn tonight. So if you're here for that case and you want to leave, that would be fine. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ham. Amy?
Thank you, Chair Warren. We had a pre-application meeting September 1st of 2022 for the property that you mentioned, and it is highlighted in yellow. The current zoning is agriculture. Current land use is single-family residential, and the future land use is agriculture. So just to re-summarize, the applicants are proposing to rezone from agriculture to RE in order to create 2 additional building lots. And the applicants have supplied a couple of exhibits for your reference there in your packets. Looking over page 2, the site characteristics review. This application generally complies with the majority of the items in the site characteristics review. Looking down at site design and compatibility, surrounding architectural features, roughly 50% of homes have at least a 1-car garage or carport, attached or detached. The applicants agreed in DPC number 3 that any new primary residential structure shall contain a minimum of 1,500 square feet of heated and cooled living space, exclusive of garages and porches. The applicants have not imposed a requirement, though, for a garage or a carport. Looking at building materials review, home in the area have exteriors comprised of a mix of brick, vinyl, and aluminum siding. The applicants agreed in DPC number 4 that any new residence shall have an exterior comprised of brick, stone, cement-based siding, engineered wood siding, or vinyl siding. They also agreed to prohibit exposed smooth-faced block above grade, but staff has noted the majority of the existing building foundations are brick or stone. Looking over at the development plan conditions, the applicants did supply some. Number 1 addresses the septic system. Number 2 deals with access to the properties. Number 3, any new single-family residence shall have at least 1,500 square feet of heated, cooled living space, exclusive of garages and porches. Number 4, any new residence shall have an exterior comprised of brick, stone, cement-based siding, engineered wood siding, or vinyl siding. There shall be no exposed smooth-faced block above grade. Number 5 establishes the building orientation. Number 6 addresses tree preservation. And number 7, future development of the site shall be sensitive to the existing small stream that runs through the rear portion of the property. Looking down at the Focus 2030 category review, staff evaluated 14 items, and I'll highlight just a few for your consideration. Looking at LU 1.1.3, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible, including the considerations noted regarding a garage or carport requirement and the proposed building foundation materials. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a high-quality development that incorporates design standards tailored to protect the surrounding area, and if it complies with LU 2. And then there's one more on page number 4. The proposal may comply with HN 2.1 and HN 4. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is located in a suitable location and if it will enhance the array of housing options available in the area. Looking back at page 1 to the points to consider. The proposal complies with majority of the criteria reviewed, assessed in the review process, with considerations noted below regarding building foundation materials, again in that garage or carport requirement. The applicants agreed to prohibit exposed smooth-faced block above grade, but staff has noted that a majority of the existing building foundations are brick or stone. And lastly, roughly 50% of homes have at least one car garage or carport, attached or detached, and the applicants have not imposed a requirement for a garage or carport. But that is all we have for a staff report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for staff? Thank you very much. Is the applicant here or their representative tonight? Yes, sir. If you would come to the microphone, please. Yes, sir. If you would state your name and address, please, sir.
Roger Choate, 5181 Bristow Road.
You swear to tell the truth, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Would you be willing to put the carport or garage?
The houses I've already built, they got garages on them right now. They'll,
Alright,
have a garage on them, yes, sir.
And have you put 1 or 2 car garages?
One car garage.
So we okay to put a 1-car garage, attached 1-car garage?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other part is on the smooth face block. Would you be okay with the brick or stone?
Yes. Is split face block okay, or does it need to be brick or
Probably needs to be brick or stone.
brick foundation? Okay, yes,
Yes, sir.
That'll be
That'd
fine.
great.
Ask a
Sir,
question.
Commissioner.
You have a house that's currently under construction, right?
I got 2 that's almost done, yes.
Is the one on the lot to the right, does that have a split face block foundation?
Yes.
Okay, so we may need to word the development plan conditions such that any new residence that's constructed would have the alternate foundation material.
So I was thinking we would use DPC number 3, and it recites the restrictions there to apply only to any new single-family residence. They'll have at least 1,500 square feet of living space. The residents shall have at least a 1-car garage and foundation shall have a facade of either brick or stone. And that's, Mr. Choate, something that you agree to? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question regarding this application? Yes, ma'am. You need to come to the microphone, please. I'm sorry.
They only
If
going
you,
to
wait a minute,
build,
hold on. If you'd state your name, that's okay.
Oh,
If you
Brenda
would state,
Boland.
if you would, wait a minute, state your name and address, please.
Brenda Bollinger, 2020 Riverside, Benleo.
Yes, ma'am. You swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And your question, please?
Are they only going to build, there's a house on the corner, and then there's a other house, the corner is probably not in that, but there's a house over here, and there's a house right next to the corner. They're going to build only one more house?
Two.
Two more. Where's the other one going to be?
There's one right there.
There's two right now.
So I think that's existing home.
There's one there.
And then on the corner, there's another home.
Yeah, I know that's there.
There's two more lots here, but I don't know, do we know?
The corner lot is in with the others then, right? I mean, there's a house on the corner lot, and there's a house where you pointed there. And he's gonna build two more?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, doesn't look like much room in there for two houses. I just wanna know how many houses they're gonna build, because I live out there, so.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. That's a
Oh.
great question. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would have a question regarding this application? All right. Hearing none, commissioners would call for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon the general development plan docket number 2023-01Z CO. Based on the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliances with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at the public hearing.
Chair Volker,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Drain. Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale, and Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. Motion is approved and goes to Warren County Fiscal Court for final approval. Our next item tonight is 2023-02 Flume. Joann Neighbors and Chad and Jamie Curtis have filed an application for a future land use amendment on a portion of a tract of land containing approximately 1 acre located at 3982 Blue Level Road from agricultural to rural density. If this Flume amendment is approved, they have a second item. Joann Neighbors and Chad and Jamie Curtis have filed an application to rezone a portion of tract of land containing approximately 1 acre at 3982 Blue Level Road from ag to RE residential state with a general development plan.
Thank you,
Jen?
Mr. Chair. We had a pre-application meeting for the property outlined in yellow on November 7th of last year. The current zoning of the property is ag. Current land use is ag. Oh, I think I may be pulling up the wrong one. No, that was right. Just double checking. And to reiterate the request, the applicants are proposing to amend the flume for 1 acre located on a portion of the property at 3982 Blue Level Road from ag to rural density residential. And then if that flume amendment is approved, the applicants would like to rezone this same portion of the property from ag to RE residential estate in order to create an additional building lot. So looking over to page 2 and looking under the future land use map, the applicants have supplied the narrative there for your all's reference to address the criteria required for a future land use map amendment. And then looking down to the site characteristics review and looking to the layout, lot sizes, and setbacks,
The front setback for existing homes in this section of Blue Level Road is more than the minimum 25-foot setback required in the proposed RE zone and shown on the rezoning plat. Many of the homes are set back at least 80 feet from the front property line. Staff suggested that the applicants consider an increased front building setback. However, this was left unaddressed by the applicants. Looking over to page 3 and looking to the natural features, a majority of the area proposed to be rezoned is heavily wooded and contains mature trees. The applicants did not agree to preserve any of the existing vegetation that's located on the property. And then also looking to prime farmland, the property does contain a soil type that's designated as prime farmland. And the soil suitability, the property does contain soil types that are classified as somewhat limited regarding soil suitability for septic tank absorption fields. Looking down under site design and compatibility, and looking to the building materials, about half of the homes have a brick or stone foundation. The remaining foundations are a mix of plain face block, split face block, and post and pier. The applicants are proposing plain or split face block foundations in DPC number 3. And then looking down to their development plan conditions on the bottom of page 3 and moving into page 4. Number 1 deals with a minimum of 1,697 square feet of heated and cooled living space, exclusive of garages and porches. Any new residence constructed on the property shall have a maximum building height of 1.5 stories. Number 2, there's a minimum of at least a 1-car garage. Number 3, exteriors of any new residence shall include vinyl siding and or brick exteriors. Building foundations shall include plain or split face block or brick. Number 4, any new resident constructed in the lot will face Blue Level Road. Moving over to page 5 and page 4, looking at number 5, access to the property shall be coordinated with and approved by Warren County Public Works. And then number 6, the Barren River District Health Department shall perform a site eval for an on-site septic system prior to the issuance of a building permit. Moving on to the Focus 2030 category review, staff evaluated 13 items, and I would just like to point out a few for your consideration. The Planning Commission should determine if the applicants have provided sufficient evidence to support the proposed flume amendment and if the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area. If the flume amendment to rural density residential is approved and the Planning Commission determines that the proposal is compatible, including the proposed front yard setback and building foundation materials, the proposed zone change will comply with LU 1.1.1, LU 1.1.2, and LU 1.1.3. Looking down to LU 2.1.4, PR 1.7, and NCR 1.1.6, the applicants did not agree to preserve any of the existing mature trees that are located on the property, and so the proposal does not comply with those items. Looking down to NCR 2.4 and 2.4.1, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal does comply with those items. Although the development is located in an area of the county with sufficient road width, the property is served by inadequate water pressure to meet the minimum fire protection requirements. The current flume designation for the property is agriculture with a proposed amendment to rural density residential. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal will result in premature development pressure on the countryside and whether or not it will set a precedent for a loss of farmland and loss of agricultural character in the vicinity. And finally, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is located in a suitable location and if it will enhance the array of housing options in the area and if it complies with HN 2.1 and HN 4. Looking back to page 1 with some final points to consider. The Planning Commission should determine the impact of the proposed development on prime farmland and the existing agricultural character in the vicinity. The front setback for existing homes in this section of Blue Level Road is more than the minimum 25-foot setback required in the proposed RE zone and shown on the rezoning plat, which is at least 80 feet in the area. About half of the homes have a brick or stone foundation. The remaining foundations are a mix of plain face block, split face block, and post and pier. The applicants are proposing plain or split face block foundations in DPC number 3, and the applicants did not agree to preserve any of the existing vegetation that is located on the property. That is all that staff have, but I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Any commissioners, any questions from staff?
Do you know, you said most of the homes in the area have an 80-foot setback, is that correct?
Yes, they have at least an 80-foot setback.
Okay. And so did you guys discuss the setbacks with the applicant, or did the engineer just prepare it with a 25-foot setback?
I was not present for that conversation, so I'm not exactly sure. That may be something that would be best answered by Rachel and or answered by the applicant.
It's okay.
I believe the original layout that was done by the engineer just labeled the generic
just
front
put
yard
the minimum,
setback.
yeah.
But in our comments and suggestions back to the applicants, we had suggested that they may want to consider that. However, in the revisions that we received, there was no change to that proposed setback.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Commissioners, any other questions? Is the applicant here or the representative? Yes, ma'am. Your name and address, please.
Joann Neighbors, 2400 Pecan Street, in Bowling Green.
Swear to tell the truth. Thank you,
Yes.
Ms. Neighbors. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Neighbors?
Ms. Neighbors, would you guys be willing to go to the 80-foot setback?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then I think the other question then we had earlier with the other applicant, would y'all be willing to go with a brick or stone foundation?
Willing to do that.
Okay. What about, last one is the trees?
If you look at the lot, pull
I know.
it's
Pretty heavily wooded.
I don't know how.
I'm not sure how, I bet she doesn't plan to take all that many out, but I don't know how to word it.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But that's not,
If the trees are mature, and they're not in the building plan, they'll probably be there.
So typically, we would say not found within the building envelope or in the way of any utilities or some similar wording. So otherwise, we'll have to clear it to build the building footprint.
So how do we address, though, her yard? So that's not within the building footprint, but she may or may not want, she may not want it so heavily wooded in the yard in particular. Is there a way for us to address that and give her the latitude?
Typically, the way that's handled too is there's a certain caliper of tree measured at 10 inches off the ground. It could be 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches.
Why don't we give her
Or
a
a
lot
certain
of,
percentage.
Yeah.
Could do a percentage.
why don't we give her a lot of latitude and say a 12-inch caliper? That's going to be a big tree, and if she decides that she wants to take some of them out to give it a little more sunlight there, and you just try to hang on to the really big mature trees. And I'm sure you plan to do that already.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, all right, very good.
All right.
I think we're all on the same page.
Probably doesn't need to be a DPC or?
No, I think it probably does. That just means we don't need to decide again.
Got it, okay, very good.
We have the same understanding about
So
the
you,
land.
you agree to these changes?
Yes,
Ms.
sir.
Neighbors? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any other questions for Ms. Neighbors? Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question or a comment regarding this application? So we will have two motions. One is the Flume Amendment, and then the other one is zoning from ag to RE estate.
Neighbors, that's all for you. Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment, docket number 2023-02 Flume. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing, the proposed Flume amendment has met the directive to amend the Flume as outlined in LU 1.1.4 in the comprehensive plan. Further, a request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale. Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Volkert. Commissioner Sissel. Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Ritchie. Commissioner Drain. Chair Warren.
Motion is approved. Zoning Commission final action. We call for a motion, please, for the RE to ag.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with condition upon the general development plan, docket number 2023-02 Z County. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, a request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale, Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Drain, Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. The motion is approved and will go to Warren County Fiscal Court for final approval. Our next item tonight is 2023-03 Flume Portales Rentals LLC, care of Omsmani Portales, has filed an application for a future land use map amendment on a tract of land containing approximately 16/10 of an acre located at 1301 Indianola Street for moderate density residential to high density residential. If the flume is approved, the same applicants have filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 16/10 of an acre located at 1301 Indianola Street from RM3 Townhouse Multifamily Residential to RM4 Multifamily Residential with a general development plan. Ms. Hurt.
Thank you, Chair Warren. We had a pre-application meeting back in November for the property you just outlined on Indianola Street. The current zoning is RM3, and the current use is multifamily. The future land use map is moderate density residential with a proposed amendment to high density residential. And on page 2, we have a reference to LU 1.1.4 of the comprehensive plan, which outlines the procedures to amend the future land use map. And the applicants provided the narrative that's in the italicized text about midway down the page, and that's there for your reference. And the Planning Commission should determine if the applicants have provided sufficient information to address the criteria to amend the flume. Looking at the site characteristics review, there's an existing 4-unit residential structure located on the property that is currently under renovation. The existing use and structure are legal non-conforming or grandfathered in. The applicant is proposing to install a 6-space parking lot to the rear of the property, and this would be considered an increase to the existing nonconformities and is not permitted under the current RM3 zoning. So the only way the applicant can achieve the proposed parking lot would be to amend the future land use map and rezone the property to RM4. Jumping down to the natural features, there are some mature trees that are located at the rear portion of the site. It's my understanding these would have to be removed to accommodate the proposed parking lot, and the applicants did not agree to preserve any of these trees. Looking at the site design and compatibility review on page 3, looking at the architectural features, there's a mixture of 1- and 2-story buildings of varying ages in the vicinity. The existing properties fronting the north side of Indianola Street in the same block have green space in the backyards and do not incorporate asphalt parking lots. Looking at the building materials review, buildings in the vicinity have exteriors comprised of a mix of vinyl, aluminum, and wooden siding. Some structures incorporate stone as a primary facade material. A majority of the existing building foundations in the area are stone. And if the existing structure is ever replaced, the applicants have stated that permitted exterior materials would include vinyl, aluminum, wood, or stone siding, and the applicants did not address foundation materials in their development plan conditions. Touching on open space, the applicants agreed to provide a minimum of 25% open space. The existing properties on the north side of Indianola in the same block incorporate a much greater area of open space than the minimum proposed by the applicant. Looking at the development plan conditions at the bottom of page 3, number 1 looks at access to the site. A, below that, looks at location of parking on the site. B and C on the next page also relate to access to the property. 2 sets the minimum green space requirement at a minimum of 25%. 3, if the existing structure is ever demolished, the local fire departments would have opportunity to utilize the structure for training, and salvageable materials would be donated to a nonprofit organization. Any new structure would contain no more than 4 units with a total of 6 bedrooms, and any new structure would be no more than 2 stories tall. And any new structure would be oriented to face Indianola Street and have a similar front setback to the surrounding properties. And then letter F looks at those building materials that I touched on just a second ago. Looking at the Focus 2030 category review, there were 2 items the staff found to be in compliance, there were 3 out of compliance, and there are 12 for your consideration. The first, LU 1.1.1 and LU 1.1.2, which deal with the future land use map amendment and compatibility. Also, LU 1.1.3, the Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area, including the installation of a parking lot in a historically residential setting, the proposed foundation materials, and lack of tree preservation. Looking at LU 2 and 2.1, those look at quality of development and character preservation. LU 2.1.1 looks at open space. LU 214 PR 1.7 and NCR 1.1.6, those deal with preservation of the tree canopy. And then below that, LU 2.5 and 2.5.2, which look at infill development, compatibility, and protecting existing neighborhood character. And then on the next page, NCR 2.5 and 2.5.3 deal with the existing structure. Due to its age, it's designated as a historic structure. They're not locally designated or nationally designated. And then last, HN1 and HN1.3, which looks at compatibility of infill development, character and pattern of development, and whether or not the proposal will strengthen the existing neighborhood. With that, I will wrap up on page 1 with our points to consider. The Planning Commission should consider if the conversion of the existing backyard and green space into a parking lot in a traditional residential setting is appropriate in this location, and if the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area and properties. Second, the applicants did not address foundation materials for any new residential structure if the property is ever redeveloped. And last, the applicants did not agree to preserve any of the mature trees that are located on the property. That is all for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. Commissioners, any questions?
A couple. So let me see if I understand correctly. There's how many units there currently?
4.
And those are grandfathered in?
Yes, because in RM3, the lot area is too small for that number of units.
Where do these residents currently park?
If we go back to the aerial, historically there are maybe a couple of parking spaces back here in the back corner, and then there's also on-street parking that's available. The applicant is a new owner and has been renovating the site, but I believe the previous owner and occupants of the building were parking in the back left corner of the property and then on the street.
So would it be fair to say that this has been operating as a fourplex for some period of time?
Yeah, it wasn't clear when the renovation started exactly how the building had been chopped up, but we did our best to try and determine a reasonable number of units and bedrooms as far as reconfiguring the interior of the site. But historically, the number of bedrooms have been similar, occupants have been similar, and parking, to my knowledge, was not previously an issue, but the applicant may have more information as far as that is concerned.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there's any other questions for staff? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Is the applicant here or their representative and would like to make comments? Yes, sir. If you would come to the microphone. Yes, sir. If you would state your name and address, please, sir.
My name is Osmani Portales. My address 312 Gaywood Avenue, Bowling Green, Kentucky 42101.
Swear to tell the truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
I am the owner of this property, so we bought it like 3 or 4 months ago. When, like she said, Rachel was a grandfather, was 7 apartment, but was in really bad shape. So the idea was try to rehab the entire building because I not consider to take down because it was in really bad shape. So we tried to rehab and preserve the original style on the front face, redo everything like was before, but just try make more sense for inside circulation. Was 7 room different. So we try to make 4 apartments. We keep on the same 6-bedroom room. Yeah.
I think the only question I have is, would you guys be willing to preserve any trees that did not come into the new parking lot?
The tree we took down a month ago. because the tree was huge and bothered the original structure. This is another reason the house was settling on the back because destroy all the foundation on the back. So we tried to rehab. This is another reason we take the decision to take.
So you've already taken the tree down?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I understand you correctly? You said it was 7 units when you bought it?
6 units.
6 units?
Yes.
And you're paring that down to 4 units, correct?
Yes.
Okay. One last question. In the event that this unit is at some point torn down, would you agree to a brick or stone exterior if the unit is torn down and replaced and rebuilt?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
So one of the things that we provide for, or we try to provide for here, is future use of this property. So currently, you're not planning to tear down this structure, but let's say you sold it to someone else and they decided to tear it down. Would you agree to stipulate or put in the development plan conditions that the exterior of this structure, in the event that it's torn down, would be a brick or stone exterior to make it more compatible with the surrounding units? Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you, sir.
EBC 3F, and it says any new constructed structure shall utilize either brick or stone exterior.
That's correct. Brick or stone veneer.
Period. No need to address the foundation, I suppose. Gotcha. Do you agree to that? Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a question regarding this application? Yes, ma'am. If you would come to the microphone, please. Sir, you can go ahead and sit down. Yes, ma'am. If you'd state your name and address, please.
My name is Janet Flora, and I live at 1322 Indianola Street.
Swear to tell the
house-
truth.
I do.
Thank you.
I live 3 houses down on the other side of the street from that house. And my question mainly is, in that block of Indianola, there are probably about half of the properties are owner-occupied, and they're single-family residences. What is that going to do to us if it's changed to high-density residential? Is that going to make a difference on our properties? It won't affect it, okay.
He already has the units there, so
Yeah.
it's not going to, in my opinion, you're cleaning up a little of the parking on the
Well,
street.
it's cleaning up the whole house because I've lived in that
Absolutely.
neighborhood
So,
all my
no,
life.
so
and
it should not affect
the
any of
house
that.
was looked like it was falling down. It's been a dump for many, many years, and there was at least 6 or 7 one-bedroom apartments in it.
Yeah.
So he's done a great job. It's just the parking issue now because several houses in that block are owned by people at the university that rent them out to college students. When you've got a 4-bedroom house and you've got 4 people living in it and there's one driveway, that's 3 people on the street plus all of their friends. And you're talking about 4 2-bedroom apartments in that house. There's already not parking on the street, so he's got to have some place for parking.
I think that's what he's trying to resolve.
Yeah, and I hope he gets it. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to affect the rest of us in the neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, ma'am.
I mean,
It should have no effect on you at all.
Okay. All right. I mean, they've done a great job so far. I've been very happy with the looks of it. It's made a big difference in the neighborhood.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience tonight that has a comment or a question regarding this Flume amendment? And okay, commissioners, the first motion would be for the future land use map amendment.
Make the motion to approve the proposed future land use map amendment, docket number 2023-03 Flume. Based on the testimony and documents presented at the public hearing, the proposed Flume amendment has met the directive to amend the Flume as outlined in LU 114 in the comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Chair Volker,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Sissel, Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale, and Chair Warren.
Yes, ma'am. The future land use amendment has been approved. Zoning board final action. Next would call for a motion for the change from RM3 to RM4.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and condition upon the general development plan docket number 2023-05ZBG. Based on the testimony and documents presented at the public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliances with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion include the summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at the public hearing.
Commissioner Volker,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Drain,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale, Chair Warren.
The motion's been approved and will go to the Bowling Green City Commission for final approval. Our next item tonight is 2023-06 Z County Higgins Homesteads LLC, care of Clark Higgins, has filed an application to rezone a tract of land containing approximately 24 acres located at 979 Mormon Lane from Ag to RM3 Townhouse Multifamily Residential and RE Residential Estate with the General Development Plan. Sir?
Thank you, Chair Warren. We had a pre-application meeting back in November for 979 Mormon Lane, currently zoned agriculture. Current use is also agriculture. The future land use map is moderate density residential. And, where's the, is the concept on here? Or is that the blank slide? That's okay, we can get to it still. Oh, there it is. It just wasn't displaying in the full screen, so we'll just leave it like that for now. Jumping on to page 2, I was going to touch on the layout, lot sizes, and setbacks. And as you can see from the concept, the applicants are proposing to develop the property with a maximum of 187 townhomes, which are considered to be attached single-family residential units. And there's also one building lot that is proposed for a single-family detached home that would front Mormon Lane. That's kind of this olive green color down in the bottom right corner. Touching on the transportation infrastructure, the property has frontage on Mormon Lane, which is a county-maintained urban local roadway with 50 feet of right-of-way and 22 feet of pavement width. And the Warren County Public Works Department, if this were to move forward, is requiring that the developer install right and left turn lanes on Mormon Lane into the proposed development, and is also requiring a temporary turnaround at the end of the westernmost stub street. And the applicants did agree to these requirements in their development plan conditions. Looking at the cultural or historical features at the bottom of page 2, we have noted that the existing residence was constructed in 1905. However, it is not historically designated locally or nationally. And the application complies with the majority of the items in the site characteristics review, except for potential demolition of the existing historic home. On page 3, touching on the surrounding density, I'll jump back to the density map. We've highlighted the existing subdivisions in the area. Of the ones highlighted on the map, densities range from 0.17 dwelling units per acre to 21.58 dwelling units per acre. The proposed density for the RM3 portion of the development is 8.01 dwelling units per acre. For the RE portion is 0.81 dwelling units per acre, and the overall proposed density is 7.65 dwelling units per acre. The density for the nearest sewer developments in the area is 4.92 dwelling units per acre for Countryside Manor, which would be this subdivision right here. And then also Harmony, which is across the way, is 3.58 dwelling units per acre. Touching on the surrounding architectural features, the majority of the existing residences in the area are one-story. The binding elements and development plan conditions for Northridge and Woodstone Springs require a minimum home size of 1,100 square feet. There is no garage requirement for those subdivisions.
The minimum home size required for the Harmony subdivision is 1,200 square feet plus a minimum one-car attached garage. The applicant set a minimum home size for the RE lot at 1,800 square feet. A minimum one-car attached garage is also required. The applicants have not imposed a minimum home size for the townhomes in the RM3 portion of the development, but did agree to a minimum of a one-car attached garage for each home. Looking at the proposed building orientation, the applicants address building orientation or a screening requirement for the RM3 portion of the development, but they did not address building orientation for the RE portion of the development. Jumping down to proposed open space, the applicants have agreed to provide a minimum of 30% open space for the RM3 portion of the development. The minimum required in the proposed RE zone is 70%. The applicants have not specified any residential amenities that would be incorporated into the proposed development for the RM3 portion. The application complies with the majority of the items assessed in the site design, with considerations noted regarding building orientation for the proposed RE lot, minimum home size for the townhome lots, and residential amenities for the proposed townhomes. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the area. Looking at the traffic impact study requirements, those are outlined in section 314 of the zoning ordinance. And a traffic impact study was not required by the Warren County Public Works Department in lieu of those improvements that I touched on earlier with those temporary turnaround and the turn lanes on Mormon Lane. Jumping down to the development plan conditions, for the RM3 portion of the development, there would be a maximum of 187 dwelling units that would be utilized for single-family residential purposes only. Number 2, a maximum building height of 2 stories, and also a requirement for uniform design and color. Number 3 outlines building materials. 4 addresses streetlights for the development. 5 requires sidewalks on both sides of the street. 6 deals with tree preservation or a new tree planting requirement. And then 7 are those transportation improvements that I touched on. Number 8 requires that utilities be underground. Number 9 deals with building orientation or screening along Mormon Lane. 10 requires that the development include a homeowners association. 11 addresses sinkholes. 12 requires that the developer donate salvageable materials from the home and offer the fire department opportunity for training prior to demolition. 13 requires a minimum of 30% open space. And then below that, there are 5 development plan conditions for the RE lot. Number 1 sets the minimum home size at 1,800 square feet. 2 outlines permitted building materials and requires at least a one-car attached garage. 3 requires new utilities to be underground. 4 deals with access to Mormon Lane, and 5 addresses sinkholes. Jumping down to the Focus 2030 category review, we found 6 items to be in compliance. 2 are out of compliance, and there are 11 for your consideration. The first being LU 1.1.3. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible, including the proposed building orientation for the RE lot, minimum home size for the townhome lots, and overall proposed density. Below that, LU 2 and 2.1, which deal with quality of development and character of the area. LU 2.1.1 looks at open space, and the Planning Commission should determine if the amount of planned open space is usable and of scenic or ecological value. And then on page 6, LU 214, PR 1.7, and NCR 116, which deal with tree preservation. The applicants also agreed to plant at least 1 new tree per dwelling. NCR 25 and 253, and those deal with the existing historic home. HN1 and HN 1.3, which look at compatibility of infill development, character and pattern of development, and whether or not the proposed development would strengthen nearby neighborhoods. And last, HN 2.1 and HN 4, which look at suitability of the location of the proposed development and also the array of housing options in the area. With that, I will go back to page 1. We have a few points to consider. The applicants have not imposed a minimum home size for the townhomes, but did agree to a minimum of a one-car attached garage for each home. The applicants did not address building orientation for the RE lot. The applicants agreed to a minimum of 30% open space for the RM3 portion of the development, but have not incorporated any residential amenities to serve the residents of the proposed development. And last, the proposed density is within the range of the densities in the surrounding area
and is approximately 2 times more dense than the nearest residential developments, Countryside Manor and Harmony subdivision. That is all I have for the staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hurt. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Rachel, at Harmony, what were the building orientation we allowed?
The building orientation?
No, I'm sorry, not the orientation, do we allow siding?
Yes, I
Was
believe
it
that is
50%?
somewhere in here. Let's see.
If you set it up.
Oh, yeah, the development plan conditions, I didn't go over it in the report, but for Harmony, allow vinyl as a primary exterior material for residences. Plain face block, however, is prohibited.
So Rachel, so the highest density in the area is 21.58. Refresh my memory, what's the density of this proposed project?
The overall density, if you factor in the RM3 and RE lot together, is 7.65.
And so these are all considered single-family, separate deed?
Yes. It's hard to see, but if you were to zoom in on the concept, there would actually be a lot line going through each unit. And if you were to purchase one of these units, you would own your entire unit and your front yard and your rear yard. You would own the land and the unit together.
So it has a parting wall in the center?
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Is there going to be an HOA?
Yes, that's required in development plan condition number 10.
Just to clarify, so it looks like vinyl is prohibited in this one, correct?
Yes. I think we had noted that the applicants have included more restrictive requirements for their materials in development plan condition 3.
Not on the town.
Well,
Right,
it's
soffits only.
allowed in the soffits, but it's prohibited as a building material on the facades. Was it 50%? I thought it said no vinyl on the
Exterior facades should be constructed of brick, stone, LP Smart siding. Yeah, there's no percentage.
No
The
percentage.
50% is for the RE lot only.
Yeah, for the house lots.
Got it.
50% on the
Okay,
house
I'm sorry, I
lots.
didn't hear you say the house lot.
Yeah.
Just the
Okay.
one, yeah, the RE lot, right?
Commissioners, any other questions? Just FYI, this motion will be for the 4 county commissioners, Ms. Drain, Mr. Graham, and Mr. Volker, and then Mr. Brown. All right, so applicant's representative here. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I represent the applicants, Clark and Katie. David Broderick, how are you?
All
Swear
right,
to tell
David,
the
do you have
truth.
an address?
921 College Street.
You swear to tell the truth.
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you, David.
Let me clarify 2 things real quick. As to the orientation of the RE zone, it would face Mormon Lane. And we'll be glad to correct that. It would be the only structure that way, but it would make sense to do it, but we'd also agree to do that. As to the RM3 portion, as to the square footage, the minimum square footage, normally in RM3 you don't see that, but the minimum square footage would be 1,400 square feet.
We'll put that in TPC number 1. Is that
That's fine.
suit everybody?
Those are the only 2 corrections that I noticed that we had not clarified.
Building orientation, David, can we put that in the number 2 of the RE section?
That's fine. Members of the commission, we think this is a very good project. It's a unique single-family project, and we ask you to pass it unless you have any other questions.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant's representative?
So just to clarify, it's 1,400 square feet exclusive of the single-family garage, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Looks good.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Broderick.
Thank you all.
Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has questions to this proposal? Yes, sir.
Gary Norton, 1555 Mormon Lane.
Mr. Norton, swear to tell the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I just want to ask a couple of questions. Did you say or I don't know who I addressed it to, sorry.
Well, I'll be glad to answer.
No, I mean, no, I'm not complaining about nothing. Is it townhouses or just like single townhouses?
David, if you come up to the microphone, because it's being recorded.
They're all
please.
townhouses.
They're all townhouses, and they'll all be single-family dwellings.
Okay, that's fine, because we have 30 acres that joins to the back of it, and we're trying to get rid of ours too, so I just want an idea of what's going on.
Well, we're in the business.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Is there anyone else in the audience tonight that has a question regarding this application? All right, hearing none, would call for a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with condition upon the general development plan, docket number 2023-06Z County. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and action items presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further request that this motion includes summary of evidence and summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Volkert,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
and Commissioner Drain.
Motion is approved and goes to Warren County Fiscal Court for final approval. Thank you all. Our next item tonight is, will be Mr. Peterson. The City County Planning Commission, well, we're having a public hearing to consider a text amendment to the zoning ordinance of the Warren County in order to revise Articles 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and Appendix A, Exhibit G2, Historic Overlay Standards. And Commissioners, you have this in your packet. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Warren, Commissioners. Ms. Hurt provided a memo, I think in your packets. We sent an email out a couple weeks ago letting you know of these changes, as there are quite a few changes. I think there's proposed 80-some pages that have changes to them, and almost every article. I will not go over all those specifically tonight unless you have questions, but I can, and I'm prepared to if I need to. May have to have Rachel's help along the way, but all of this has been posted on the web. We've been working with various groups over really the past couple of years on various aspects of the zoning ordinance, things we might be able to change. The requests come from citizens, come from the legislative bodies, come from various locations. So I'm only going to highlight about 10 to 15 of the bigger items. As with most times we do these, the large majority of these are housekeeping changes, maybe tweaking things to match the way they're applied in the office as we go along. So I'm just going to follow along the summary of proposed amendments that you had in your packet. That is basically just that bulleted list with the tick marks down through there. And I'm just going to start with Article 1 and go through and just highlight a few of these as we go. Article 1 is we've had a fairly it's a small change, a tweak, but we think it'll help with some of the suggestions and/or issues we found where the sewer, a hard standard sewer requirement, if you're within 2,000 feet, is negatively impacting the small guy, if you will, the one or two lots. So we're proposing to make a tweak there to allow an exemption, for lack of a better term, to allow some of these one-lot subdivisions to happen and not necessarily have to connect to sewer. There's two different parts there on page 1-3 to where we would allow that flexibility for sewer requirements for agriculture and single-family uses on a 10-plus acre ag zone lot, and then for a sewer exemption for property up to 4 lots if they're less than 10 acres being subdivided from a parent tract, and the date in there ties it to other requirements we have in the zoning ordinance. So that is to help address some of the issues we've seen there that have come up mostly in the county from time to time. The next piece, it sounds scary, but it's not. So we're removing the fire protection requirements out of the zoning ordinance. It's simply because they're already stated by city and county ordinances. So instead of having them listed in two places, we're just moving it out of the zoning ordinance, and we will default to both the city and county fire protection ordinances for those. So we're not getting rid of fire protection ordinances. They'll just be deferred to the city and county. That way we don't have to amend the zoning ordinance when they amend those ordinances. City has just recently, or is fixing to, change their fire ordinance, and the county is considering similar changes as well. Article 2, we have no changes proposed, which I think is the only one. Then Article 3, I will only highlight one about 2/3 of the way down. We've added an additional site development plan application threshold to include any new multifamily residential being constructed that is greater than 4 units, all commercial, public institutional, industrial development, regardless of the area disturbed. So we have our comprehensive development review process. We've ran into a couple of situations where sites are purposely being designed to be just under 1 acre so they can get out of some of our requirements, and that has caused several issues with both city and county public works departments and stormwater reviews and other things. So we think that this change is a good thing for the community and won't have that much of an impact on the community. And stop me if you have questions as we go along. Moving on to Article 4, on page 2, we're revising incompatible land use buffer planning requirements to just exclude shrubs and ornamental trees. And so therefore just remove that option. If it's a screening and a buffering requirement, then it needs to be screened and buffered all year round. So it's just going to be an evergreen requirement from now on. Should this pass. Similar in that landscaping vein, we are just added a restriction in there that we're going to prohibit riprap and limestone gravel and aggregate. Believe it or not, we've had that request to just dump gravel in a landscape bed and that be their decorative gravel. So we're just clarifying that. We don't allow that, but we're clarifying that is not an option. One thing that what we're adding, we're going to kind of modernize our zoning ordinance a little bit in this. We're adding flexibility for on-street parking to count towards the minimum on-site parking requirements. And this would be for commercial uses, but it'd be at a reduced rate to where the staff, city, county, and our staff can determine what that ratio would be. And so we're trying to do that, especially in our downtown area where maybe there's sufficient on-street parking. Maybe we can have a little bit less asphalt on the interior lot to make up for that. So hopefully that's a good change and be a little bit more flexible and allow possibly a little more density, but with a lot less impact on the built environment. The next one I'll highlight is amendment to our temporary signs section to allow off-premise advertising on temporary signs only and basically commercial zones. This was a request from the city of Bowling Green and Warren County, but by way of our realtors and auctioneers kind of leading that charge. So temporary signs will still be prohibited in all rights of way, but this will allow the ability for them to negotiate at another business the possibility of putting a sign there directing someone to an auction or a sale that is off premise. But it's open, it'd be open for any business, but typically it's realtors or auctioneers to do that. So that's a request that was made by the Realtors Association, but also by way of City of Bowling Green. The next one is a similar request, similar in nature, and that is to be able to have the ability to have electronic message display signs and lighted signs in the historic districts. Right now, those are just prohibited of any type, and that would include neon signs or marquee signs, but we know we've had those in our historic districts before, so it's again trying to encourage maybe a little more development in some of our areas. But it's not just a blanket approval. They would still have to go before the Historic Preservation Board and get approval before those types of signs would be allowed. So it just gives the option and the flexibility to possibly have those be reintroduced back into our historic districts. As far as the next one I'll highlight is flexibility for permitted structures and uses in floodplain. I think fortunately for our community, we have not only the city, but we have some private developers that are very interested in developing some things along our riverfront. We have to be very careful with these regulations. We think we've done that, so we've crafted language to allow some recreational type structures in the floodplain for large commercial uses or even public uses that may make sense, but it would be at the discretion of the floodplain coordinator and of course have to be approved through our development review process. But this is in preparation for what we hope to be a fairly significant development along our riverfront. So hopefully a good change, but without having negative impacts on the community. At the bottom of that page, there's several changes related to the local historic districts, but I'll just mention along with the appendix, I think it's Appendix A, what was it, Rachel? G or G2. Basically, we rewrote our entire historic design guidelines, our historic overlay standards. So this is part of the whole zoning ordinance amendment. And what we intend with these is that the requirements themselves didn't change, but it's hopefully in a much better arrangement, much easier to understand, and a much better tool for not only us, but for citizens who live or own property in those historic districts to be able to tell what they need approval for, what might be approved. So you'll have a pretty good idea going into it, what can be approved, what's not, what's going to be allowed before even having to talk to us. So that's the goal there. And I will mention with all the historic regulations, we did speak with the current president of the Landmark Association, and we also vetted these changes for the historic districts with our Historic Preservation Board as well. So we did do that before bringing those forward. Moving on to Article 5, the first bullet under there is probably the biggest change to the ordinance, and one that we feel like that we have to do. But in order to comply with with the Federal Fair Housing Act as it relates to disabled residents living in either a household living situation, so a normal household, or a group living facility, we feel that some changes are necessary to our ordinance to be able to be more in compliance or more in the safe zone. I don't know if, Hamp, there's a better way to explain it or not, but our current ordinance probably isn't quite where we need it to be there, and there's been some situations come up in recent times where it's time to probably just take a look at those regulations and make a change. This is one I'll just say is probably not highly favorable by everybody. I don't know that everybody likes it, but I think it's something that we have to do in order to be more in compliance. So what does it do? It basically allows anyone who is qualified as disabled under the Federal Fair Housing Act to be able to have the chance to live anywhere in the community. We can't have any special process for them to go through. We can't have any onerous regulations that might prevent them from having the opportunity to do that. So just to be upfront, recovering drug addicts and alcoholics are considered disabled under the Federal Fair Housing Act. So some of our current ordinances kind of limit where those can go, and this will allow those to go pretty much anywhere in the community, but we have built in some character considerations for that. If they have to have a parking lot or something like that associated with those uses, there's a screening requirement that they'll have to abide by. And likewise, we, as part of the reasonable accommodation that we have to provide, we would limit the number of people living in those facilities to 2 per bedroom, and that would be as the home was configured at the time they were purchased or purchased it or started using this facility in this household living use or group living facility manner. So, for example, if I was to buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and that's what the PVA record said it was, and I wanted to open one of these facilities, then I would be limited to no more than 4 people because it was 2 bedrooms, so there'd be 4 total in that home. If I had a 4-bedroom home, it would be up to 8 people, 2 per bedroom, and then we have a not to exceed 8, so there would be a maximum of 8. So that is probably the biggest impact, the biggest change. But after meeting with Mr. Moore and our county attorney, Amy Milliken, and our city attorney, Hillary Hightower, and our Board of Adjustment attorney, Hoy Hodges, we feel like this, the language that we've crafted is probably the most compliant with the act, but also gives us the what limited power we have to regulate these. So I guess that's the long way of saying there's not much we can do about it. Moving along, and almost done, a couple bullets down, we've added limited RV stays as a specific use type in the overnight accommodation use category. So I guess the easiest way to explain this one is everybody's pretty familiar with Airbnbs or short-term rentals. Well, now there's basically Airbnbs for campers. Harvest Host is probably the most popular that we know of for that. But we've been approached by a subcommittee of our Tourism Visitors Bureau, and I've asked that at some of our major tourist attractions and at some of our wineries and other attractions to have the ability for someone to stay overnight in the RV that they bring. So basically they would provide a limited number of spots. So if you're a small farm winery, for example, you would be able to have 1 spot by right for somebody to stay overnight and just 1 night. At our attractions such as maybe the Corvette Museum or our historic rail park, they would be able to provide up to 4 of those spaces by right. Anything more than 4 spaces would require a campground approval and likely some sort of public hearing, but this would be flexible, a lot more modern than probably what we've done, but we're trying to keep up with the times and help provide that flexibility. So that was a request made by that group, and we're very happy to work with them and able to craft regulations I think we can all be happy with. Another one for home occupations, for conditional use permits, Board of Adjustments, we're allowing these home-based businesses the ability or the flexibility to ask for up to 2 employees that do not reside on the property. So for example, if you were doing catering out of your home and maybe your sibling and or child was helping you cook or do whatever, and they lived in a different home, we don't allow that. This would just be the ability for them to come and help you out legally and be able to ask for that ability to do that. So one of the things we talk about a lot is the ability for someone to, Dell is probably one of the more famous examples. He started that in his garage. Get a couple of people to help you, you grow a little bit, and then you need to move on to somewhere where you can have a business. But we need to be able to have those steps in place to allow those businesses to grow. That would be only for conditional use permits. It would take a public hearing, so neighbors would be notified. People would have to go through that process and get approval to do that. But again, trying to provide more flexibility there. With that, I think that's pretty much the big highlights. Again, you've had this list for a while. If you have specific questions or want me to go over anything in more detail, I'll be happy to do so. And then I'll ask Rachel to correct anything that I got wrong also.
And just one quick question. We talked about this on the Fair Housing Act, disabled residents and who falls underneath that. How does parking comply with that? If it's a two-bed, using your example of two-bedroom, 4 people are going to live there, whether they have cars or not, and how does that work?
So our zoning ordinance already requires a certain amount of space for every home per bedroom, regardless of the living situation. And ideally, that will be maintained, because the purpose and the idea behind the whole concept of this is that they fit into the neighborhood, be compatible with the neighborhood, and not negatively impact the neighborhood. So ideally, in my mind, is they would not have any extra parking. But typically in some of the, well, I won't say typically, in many of these situations, they don't have cars, so they don't need extra parking. In some situations, there are vans or shuttles that take them places. Most people in these situations are required to have a job, go to work, and a lot, you're basically trying to teach them to be responsible and integrate back into society. That it sometimes requires parking. We've had a few that have had to have up to 4 or 5 spaces. It varies. It's a reduced rate, yeah.
The ordinance requirements compared to just standard single-family living in a neighborhood would actually be a lesser requirement for the reasons Ben was just explaining, that typically residents don't have cars, or only a limited number may be allowed to have a car.
Basically what we're going to, if for some reason they do have to have, similar to maybe this situation tonight where they're putting in a parking lot, they're going to have to basically screen that like it would be if it was a commercial parking lot, to try to help mitigate some of the negative impacts that would cause. But from the get-go, we're going to try to encourage them not to have to do that. But if we obviously don't, well, in the community, we don't allow parking in the grass in a lot of situations, and we don't want to overload the streets either. So it's just kind of that balance. We have to make the provision for that.
All right, Ben.
I have a question or more of maybe an observation. But it seems like that, I've been in conversations where there's been talk about how much public notice costs. And I see some changes in here where it looks like we're trying to reduce public notice. So talk to me about that.
Sure, I can see where that would be the idea there. A couple of those were just, I guess, we missed it. We're just cleaning it up. The others would be we no longer send out letters anymore. We do postcards. And so a lot of that's just changing the language from saying we're going to send you a letter with a map. Now we send a postcard with a QR code and with a link to the web map, and we've been doing that for a while now. We haven't sent maps for forever, so everything is still well within compliance, and we still do everything above and beyond what the state statutes require.
Couldn't even just put, maybe it's still a little kind of map.
There's really not room. I mean, it's, you know, it's very small.
Barcodes. It's older people who
I
tend
understand.
to pay attention.
Yeah, we have the link under the QR code, and then we also say, go here for more information. They can call us.
Well, go look at 3.3 on number 4. I don't quite understand that either, where maybe the administrative appeals, you used to send out letters to adjacent property owners, and now you just want to send the letter out to the appellant. So, I mean, what's that about? I mean, how do-
Which one is that again? Oh, that's the same thing. It's a postcard now.
But it's not going out to. Was in the
There is
past.
no, so what an administrative appeal is if our office makes a determination of the zoning ordinance that you don't agree with, you appeal that to Board of Adjustment, and it's pretty much strictly just a judicial hearing for that. It's more judicial than quasi-leaning, I guess, and so there is no adjacent property owners in that regard. They're literally just challenging our interpretation of the zoning ordinance. So we just notify the appellant, the applicant is the only one that gets notified in that situation. So there's not any adjacent property owners.
Only way the.
Well, they're the ones who made the applications.
that's what seemed
It's
odd.
just basically the KRS statute saying that we have to notify them the time and the date of the hearing. But it's not like we don't tell them that anyway. Yeah, because the meetings are all set. Yeah. Yeah, it is a little bit odd, but I promise you, we're not changing any of our notification requirements, other than we had to switch to postcards for a number of reasons. Postcards get out faster, they're delivered faster. And then just the cost of the mail is just crazy now.
I got them page by page, so you'll have to.
It's okay. Yep.
On 4 or 5, and I think this may go to the swimming pool change. There's a change in the setback from 10 to 25, and so I'm wondering, is that made because of the swimming pool?
No, I think that is, let me see. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I can
Go
explain
ahead.
it.
Yep.
So, in our residential zones, and I don't think it's in any of these pages because there weren't any changes, but in our rural residential zone, the required side yard setback for a 2-acre lot is 25 feet. So we thought it was quite odd that for a large agricultural tract where you would have much more elbow room, I guess, that the required setback on the side would be 10, which would be even less than a lot that's smaller with a greater setback. So just going along with the agricultural character, there was really no reason for a 10-foot setback. It just seemed very odd. So that proposed change isn't really related to the swimming pool standards that are proposed for the ag zone. That was purely just, we realized there was no standard. If you're on ag zone property, 2 acres or greater, there was no requirement for swimming pools and that they had to be fenced or secured in a safe way. You know, if someone's, I mean, people shouldn't be just wandering on your property if you have a swimming pool, but it was more of a safety concern to make sure that anyone installing a pool in our community would have the same fencing requirements.
So this swimming pool amendment is the same across all the different categorizations? It just has been
It
like.
matches, yeah, it
That's-
adds it in there. It was kind of left out of there, so we just put it in there
That's
to
what I was
match all the
wondering.
rest of the zones.
Other questions, commissioners, comments? Mr. Peterson, thank you and staff for all of your hard work in putting this together. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has a comment regarding these proposed amendment changes? Yes, ma'am.
Jamie Johnson. Do you need my address?
Yes, ma'am.
220 Morningstar Court, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
So I am here, I'm the director for the Historic Rail Park and Train Museum, and so I'm going to speak about the part about the RV Harvest Host that he mentioned. I'm here as a representative of the Attractions Association here in Bowling Green. Some of the people that were with me is Debbie Eaton, who is with the Corvette Museum. Michael Nunn, who is a general manager at a local hotel, is also the president for the Sky Hospitality Association, so he represents hoteliers, restaurants, and attractions. And then Talia Butler, who is also here with us, she represents downtown development for the city of Bowling Green. So we are all here just in favor of that, so we just wanted to be here in case there was questions about that, but to let you know that the attractions in Bowling Green are very interested in this, and it's very beneficial for us. So if there are questions about that, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for coming out and support it.
Is there anyone else in the audience tonight that would have a comment regarding these amendment changes? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you'd state your name and address, please.
Pullum, sorry, been saying a long time. You and Pullum, 9608 Kentucky Highway 185.
Yes, sir. You swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Your comment?
Had a couple comments, but I did want a clarification question from Dan as far as the riprap. Is that commercial only, or is that including? Because I noticed on where they put the county put the highway road, they did use a lot of limestone around there, and I don't think that would.
Just be in commercial parking lots and landscape beds and like a restaurant.
Because I also noticed in some of the island divides within the city itself, there tends to be limestone in there. Not dense grade, but it tends to be either 3, 4, or 57s.
Right, the way basically it's limestone aggregates, the way it's worded, or DGA. Basically your typical gravel.
the dense grade.
But if there are some decorative limestone, basically if you can get it from Simply Mulch or something similar, then it's probably okay.
Okay. The next comments I had revolving around certain changes in Article 5. After doing some competitive analysis, different jurisdictions that's adjacent to Warren County, and then also looking at some larger jurisdictions, particularly, a little bit of Lexington, a lot of Louisville, and then also looking at some things in Nashville. I did have some questions and concerns as far as some of the changes we're going with home occupancy or home occupations, because they tend to be, there's a lot of variations within the zones and jurisdictions within. So particularly, I'm, as a employee of a company in Warren County, one challenge we've always had is trying to get people to relocate to this area. Some of the things that's been mentioned to me, they don't want to move from Nashville, they don't want to move from Louisville, and then I noticed that in some of our zoning instances, that with things like hobbies, for whatever reason, are falling into home occupancy. I don't think that's fair for the most part, and then also, when you look at some of the zoning issues, particularly the Louisville land development codes, a lot of things that we consider home occupancy that requires a conditional use permit as a permitted right. So I thought that didn't seem to make sense. And I still don't understand why sewing is considered, you gotta have a conditional use permit. That's just observation on that one. So there is some concerns there. And I've talked to Eric Aldridge about it. And I spoke to Hap Moore. He said that a lot of the problem is the fact that a lot of the zoning ordinances were developed way before the concept of e-commerce, way before the concept of work from home and remote work. As a computer programmer, and that is part of hobby too, I am concerned that if that is going to require a home occupation, that I got to come up here to get approval to get a job. Don't think that's right. We do have some coworkers that come over. We work on code. I don't know if that's permissible because there's no definition on a coworker. It's particularly when you look at Louisville, their permitted use does include one off-site employee as a permitted right. So there's some variations. So I just wondered if maybe there should be a better framework in a way you approach it versus everything's got to be a conditional use permit. That's it.
I mean, I can respond, or we can talk after the meeting a lot more about it, but I think a lot of what you just brought up is perfectly fine. So we haven't proposed any changes to any of our conditional use permit or home occupation framework other than adding the ability and the flexibility to finally have 2 employees. So a lot of times when ordinances evolve, we do baby steps. So we're actually going way more flexible than what we currently are now. The cutoff typically, just in general, is if you're having customers come to a residence or employees come to the residence, then that suddenly changes the residential nature a little bit, and how much is up for debate. So that's why the conditional use permit is typically the best way to handle those situations. We also review Louisville, Lexington, everybody else across the state and nation's ordinances. And the only thing I can say now is that we feel like what we're amending to is all this community is probably ready for in that regard, because while by right is the right thing for a lot of communities, we take a lot of calls every day about, hey, my neighbor's doing this. They had this person come over. They were in this car. They had this on the side of their car. We know they're doing a business there. So that's the best mechanism for our community right now as more and more of this comes online. As far as computer programming and you and your friends getting together or maybe even working on a project from time to time, that's not going to be any problem. We typically have a very much common sense approach to these things. I would say much more than Jefferson County or Louisville Metro ever will, just because they have much more enforcement staff than we do. So I think most of everything of what you said is probably going to be just fine under this ordinance.
Yeah, and to your point, I know looking at Louisville Metro Land Development Code, Article 444.5, they do permit, is a permissible right. They do allow 1 employee. They do allow up to 2 customers on the premise. There are some limitations, to your point, coming and going times a day, but it is a little different concept. And to your point, I understand the community is not there. I just found it very interesting that when you look at more densely populated areas, they're a little bit more modern on the code, and I understand that. It's just a thought. If eventually the framework will probably have to evolve.
Big picture thoughts is kind of where I'm at. I think this community's at. I think within 5 years we'll probably need, within 5 and certainly within 10, we're probably going to need to look at an entire new comprehensive plan, an entire new zoning ordinance, and it'll probably look completely different than what we have now. I think that's just kind of where we're heading as we continue to grow.
And I like the fact that you did come up with the Michael Dell concept, not specifically brought up the fact that, Apple itself started in a garage. I was reading an article yesterday, Yankee Candle was a garage concept that somebody had a craft that evolved over time. Right now, these are all, I have to get right from you guys essentially, or the Board of Adjustments. I just think that's a little odd, especially when you look at our, the proposals, we're listing a lot of things that's considered craft.
Maybe, I think you're misreading it a little bit. I think we have those steps in place to where you would be able to do that, but we can discuss that further.
Wanted to voice my concern about it.
Sure,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good
Great.
comments. Is there anyone else that has a comment tonight regarding the amendment changes?
So typically, it's by complaint. In the city, they have, we work with our partner agencies. They have nuisance code officers that are out. They would be mad if they heard me call them that, but they're out patrolling and looking for things, and they let us know things. Others let us know things. But almost in every case, there are more inspectors that live, private inspectors, citizen inspectors that live in the neighborhood that will call us and complain on their neighbor. And so it's typically by complaint, and it may take us a few days to get out there, but we eventually will. In order to be more flexible and allow some of the things that Mr. Pulley was talking about, we needed it to be able to have it in the ordinance, so we have something to allow those things. So it's typically by complaint. Typically, someone in the neighborhood will complain, and that's when we respond. Yeah, so the complaint process works. We'll take a complaint. We take them all anonymously for obvious reasons. And then sometimes it'll just be a simple drive-by. Hey, can we tell anything that's going on? Sometimes if we know kind of who it is, we'll just do a courtesy call. Sometimes but the official process is we do an official notice of violation, which is a courtesy notice that basically says, here is the potential violation on your property. Here's how many days you have to contact us or to correct it or whatever the remedy to the situation is. If we can tell that that's not been remedied, then we will issue a citation, and that comes with a fine, and then the property owner, whoever, would have a ability to go to the code enforcement board, either the city or the county. There's two, and basically challenge that, and then that board can decide whether to uphold the fine or hold it in abeyance till something else happens, or just simply move forward. And then ultimately those fines can build up and be put as a lien on the property, and that's the general process. Did I miss anything, Ham? Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you, staff. Commissioners would call for a motion, please, to approve the zoning text ordinance as presented tonight. We need a motion. It's on the last.
I make the motion to approve the proposed zoning ordinance text amendment as presented. My motion is based on the findings of facts as presented by staff and the testimony presented at the public hearing. That the zoning text amendment is in agreement with Section 3.10 of the Warren County zoning ordinance and the Kentucky Revised Statute, KRS Chapter 100.211. Further, I request the findings and the facts and recommendations to be sent to all the legislative bodies include a summary of the evidence and testimony presented by the proponents and opponents of the proposed text amendment.
Richie, you want to second that one? All right.
Commissioner Volkert? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Sissel? Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Ritchie?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Drain? Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale? And Chair Warren?
Yes, ma'am. The motion is approved, and the recommendation goes to all the different Warren County legislative bodies. Are there any other discussion items for tonight? Appreciate you all being here tonight in support of that. And hearing none.
I'll just remind you that we have the training at the office, and in lieu of the next meeting, it'll be at 5 p.m. So it starts at 5, and again, it'll be in our office on February 2nd. Food will be provided. Typically, right around 2 hours is about what it lasts. So we'll go over some training items. It'll count as 2 hours training, and probably the big topic we'll probably talk about is housing and just kind of where we see all that going. Be a lot of good perspectives on that, I'm sure. But that's all I have.
Thank you, commissioners, for being here tonight.